Let me paint you a picture. This is Masquerade. Not going to go over his entire backstory, because if you're here, you probably have some semblance of who this guy is. But to sum it up, he's basically the first real bad guy of Season 1. To wrap up his character arc, he has a final battle where he teams up with his nemesis and passes the torch to his alter ego, Alice, by giving her his Bakugan Hydronoid. And with what they did with Alice, overall, it was pretty good. The only problem is, the show was practically over, so they couldn't go into detail as much as they could have in comparison to the other characters. A little bit later, they announced a Season 2, Bakugan Battle Brawlers New Vestroia, and we have almost a completely new cast. Dan, Shun, and Marucho would be returning as main characters, however, the girls were completely side. Bruno and Julie were kicked out of the first arc big time, and it felt like a real slap in the face. However, Alice kinda had an excuse on why she wasn't battling. She wasn't there when everyone got the rundown on what was going on, as she was with her grandfather at the time, helping out in his lab. However, if we fast forward again to the second arc of New Vestroia, things do look a little promising, as now the girls who didn't really get a chance to do much now can because they have their Bakugan back. They can fight again. However, each of them only get one battle, each of them lose, but it's probably safe to say that the most hyped up one was, well, Alice. Hydronoid was hyped up to be presumably the strongest Bakugan ever at the time when he first showed up. And in Arc 1, we even got a mechanical version of Hydronoid called Hades, led by probably the second weakest member of the Vexos at the time, Shadow Pro, who was a great character. But because he is the wielder of Hades, it was obvious he was going to have to fight Alice eventually, as if they didn't do this, it would be a huge missed opportunity. In this video, we're going to be talking about this battle, and why I think it is the worst in Bakugan Battle Brawlers. When I say Bakugan Battle Brawlers, I mean the first gen of the Bakugan anime, as there are 2 reboots now. And I will say this again later in the video, but to some people, there are probably much worse battles than this one. However, to me, this is the worst because what this battle really was supposed to be. And as I provide more context to what is happening, maybe you'll see where I'm coming from. Because I know on paper, a lot of the battles in maybe Gundalian Invaders, Mactanium Surge, or maybe even in New Vestroia are probably a lot worse. But let's go ahead and get right into it. Okay, so why is this battle happening in the first place? Well, earlier, Spectra showed up to the Vexos after they left him for dead and basically told them all that they're ugly. Obviously, they didn't like that. However, the real reason was to basically hack their little teleporter so they can't go to the brawlers and mess with them anymore. At least not directly. So Shadow is sent after one of their close allies, this being Alice. For most people, they think the problem starts as soon as the battle starts. And we'll get to the elephant in the room in just a moment, but I want to draw your attention right before the battle starts. Shadow challenges Alice. Alice is reluctant to battle because she doesn't play Bakugan anymore, which seems to be the theme of what this battle is supposed to be. Alice trying to get her confidence back, or like embracing that part of her again. I could bring up in a way we've already done this, but I won't. The actual problem is Chan Li shows up to help her, and why? Like, I know the answer. We want Hydronoid versus Metal Hydronoid and Fortress versus Metal Bakugan Trap Fortress. But what they've basically done is they're starting to make it look like Alice just can't win this fight on her own. Because if you really want Fortress versus Fortress, Shadow Probe has another battle coming up not that long after this, and Chan could have shown up to help Marucho fight, but let's stay focused on this for now. So yeah, they activate their gauntlets. Shadow sets his gate card, throws in Hades. For those who don't remember, Hades is the name of Metal Hydronoid. Anyway, Alice then retaliates by throwing in her Bakugan after Hydronoid's like, yeah, throw me in there, I want to crush him. This is where the problem starts. The real big issue. Alpha Hydronoid's G-Power is 550, the same as Pyrus Ultimate Dragonoid's when they fought. But for some reason, it's 500. Okay, he lost 50. What's the issue? Normally, when you have a really powerful character, but you want to do a sequel to this story, you know, like anime, right? People will say things like, oh, they nerfed this character to make the other people look stronger. Sometimes I do think people exaggerate and take things out of context. However, Hydronoid, it literally happened. He's literally weaker than the last time we saw him. Why? Well, they need him to lose this battle because the plot demands it. And it's just so crazy because all the other Bakugan that came back are stronger in terms of their G power, except for Hydronoid. He's the only one who got weaker. Now, I have two theories on what could maybe be the reason for this, and I hate both of these answers. The first one is, well, Hydronoid claimed to have been feeding off the Bakugan that he sent to the Doom Dimension. He's not doing that anymore, so maybe he wouldn't get stronger, but that doesn't really answer the issue on why is he getting weaker. And the other one, I want to do a video explaining this in a bit more detail than this rambled mess I'm making, but it's essentially because this is a new game, there is the chance that the Vexos somewhat kind of rig things in their favor, because, like, okay, after Drago and Naga, Hydronoid would have been the most powerful Bakugan, right? And I know he was just Hydron's trophy, but hear me out. Let's just say one of the Vexos decided to use Hydronoid in one of their battles when they were showing off to the crowd. They lost Hydronoid. Well, how do they get him back? Nerf him ahead of time, so it's a bit more of a easy climb for them to get to. Like, again, I'm going to do a separate video further explaining this theory because it could solve a lot of the overall power creep, but for now, let's throw that out the window because my overall problem with these theories is they're theories. I know this show was this little anime that was made in Canada, but all they had to do was acknowledge it, and this wouldn't really be a big issue for a lot of people. Like, Hydronoid's not as strong as he used to be because XYZ reasons. Like, Drago takes forever to reach the level he actually was when he was Infinity Drago. You could just make up something for Hydronoid. Just do the same thing. The other reason this is a problem is because when Shun fought the fake Hydronoid, when he fought Hades pretending to be him, he was at 600, and I didn't even question it. I didn't even question it. Just do the same thing. You're like, oh, the fake Hydronoid was at 600. Just let him be at 600. The first round is pretty basic. After their Bakugan are thrown in, we have the clash with Death Triton and Laser Triton, which Hades does win because, well, Hydronoid is 100 weaker. If we did what I said earlier, then this wouldn't really be an issue, but we've already been over that. And overall, the battle is still pretty basic. Then Chan decides to step in because, well, Alice is losing. And both use two abilities back to back, and Shadow then counters with a double ability and completely overpowers them. He then activates a gate card to stop their movement before he just wins the round. And here is where some of my complaints about Chan just being here is kind of properly shown. She only jumped into the battle to lose, which really, really sucks. She's supposed to be the third strongest on Earth, or at least she was the third strongest on Earth. But, oh well. The second round, however, is easily the best part. I know I have my bias, but in terms of Alice's potential, it's the best part. Hydronoid tells Alice that he's not done with Hades left, so she sets her gate card, then throws him back in. Shadow Probe then throws Hades back in, and she immediately uses Destroy Vanish and Destruction Grind to reduce Hades' G power all the way down to 0, which causes Shadow to freak out. And while I do still think my distaste for the first round is still pretty valid, if this round right here was, well, the first round, I think it would have been a bit more bearable, because it is the first time Alice is going to be fighting, and I'm going to just be repeating myself. Let me try to move on. What makes the second round so good is from the very beginning, it looks like Alice just randomly decided to lock in, and it seems consistent with where she was last time we've seen her fight. As I said earlier, she kind of already been through the whole trying to get her confidence in battle and believing in herself and whatnot. And for those who don't remember the battle I'm talking about, she teamed up with Christopher and Klaus during the final arc, and she ended up winning that battle in just one move. Anyway, focusing on this. Like I said, Shadow is panicked because, well, his Bakugan's G power is practically at 0, and any one major attack could just end him. So he has to throw in his Bakugan trap, Darkest Fortress. And this is where what I said in the beginning of the video, or at least somewhat in the beginning of the video, that Chan's kind of here to fill one major role, and this is when she fills said role, because once Fortress is thrown out, Alice is like, okay, I'm sorry, Chun is like, alright Alice, I got this, and throws in Fortress. Shadow then uses the ability Crossfire to try to get himself back in the game, and then Chan ends up using 2 abilities back to back. There's a fusion ability in case you're curious. And it drops his life gauge down quite a bit, but Shadow does try to walk it off, and he uses his big plus 1,000 attack boost to try to go for like an Oko. This little stunt he pulled against Baron and Dan did make them a little worried, as he was able to almost beat them both. However, as he tries to intimidate Alice, she doesn't really seem too fazed by it at all, and just shrugs it off. She reveals to him that she was Masquerade, which takes him off guard. And I do want to say that this does paint a interesting question about how much do the Vexos know about Masquerade and his influence on them. Because I did do a video where I mentioned twice now that there is a chance that Masquerade probably had quite the impact on Spectra, as he was there when Hydronoid was being experimented on, but that's a topic for another time. Shadow then tries to attack Hydronoid to at least get Alice, the bigger threat, out. However, Alice activates her gate card Ring 0, which nullifies the ability, and this was actually one of Masquerade's cards as well. And we get this nice little visual where the two are talking over each other, before she then uses an ability to end the round. And I also want to bring up that during my last video when I talked about Hydronoid, I alluded to this battle by saying Hydronoid doesn't actually have any new abilities. He's the only one who doesn't get any new abilities out of the returning Bakugan. This isn't true. Indigo Nightmare is a new ability. The reason for my confusion was that the dub has a really bad habit of changing the name of the abilities. And my specific confusion was there is Death Trident, Terminal Trident, and Trident of Doom. I was under the impression that Indigo Nightmare was probably Trident of Doom, because Hydronoid says Trident of Doom in this one battle, then Masquerade says Terminal Trident. However, these are all the same ability, so that's where my confusion came from. Anyway, yeah, she uses Indigo Nightmare, reduces Hades' G power down to 100, and destroys Hades, and Shadow Probe's life gauge goes all the way down to 200, or 20%. And for a lot of people, this is where the battle should have ended. If the battle ended here, a lot of the things I've said so far, they were overall nitpicks, or at least most of them. However, despite him losing his Bakugan because Hades is destroyed, he's still in the battle. And if we did what I said earlier, just let Hydronoid be at 600, and also if Indigo Nightmare just wasn't minus 300, like, why it couldn't go anywhere higher than 300, because then he would end up winning. Like, it's so obvious that this battle is scripted for them to lose, because he has another Bakugan this entire time that he just never bothered to use. I get it, he's supposed to be kind of crazy, but like, come on, a Bakugan that's even stronger than Hades, which, even though I don't think Shadow Probe is that good of a battler, Hades is a powerhouse. That's like the one thing he has going for him. And he just decides not to use it until this very moment. And some people have commented and said their thoughts. I've looked it up right before I made this video, that they think if his Bakugan was destroyed, he should have just lost the battle. And I kind of agree with that mindset. Wait, hold on. Did he actually lose all his Bakugan? Okay, so I just looked it up. I had to double check. He still has the Bakugan Trap. He still has Darkest Fortress. He could have just battled with that. Yeah, he wasn't going to win, but there goes the problem. He has to win. The plot needs him to win this battle. Again, if you really, really wanted to debut Max Spider, there is a battle coming up where it would have been perfect, because he takes the attribute energy in that battle. And going back to, they could have doubled or increased how much Indigo Nightmare was for, I guess, Hydronoid's advantage. Like, it's only minus 300. It could have been more. They didn't even have to do that. Just let Alice use a double ability. Her first double ability. Simple. Death Trident, Indigo Nightmare, the match is done. Yeah, I know he would only had 100, but like, these little things would have just ended the battle. And this is Alice's final battle in the series. She doesn't come back after New Vestroia, and she doesn't help with the final battle at all. I'm not really talking about the third round because I don't really think it's anything too crazy, which is why it kind of bothers me. I remember the third round going a lot faster when I first watched it, and I was with my brother, and we were staring at the screen and just questioning what happened. They did not just have Alpha Hydronoid lose like that after taking out Hades. And the thing that makes it worse, because like I said, Max Spider, who is apparently stronger than Hades, or at least a more powerful Bakugan, right? It beats Fortress and Alpha Hydronoid, who we were originally introduced might be a contender for the most powerful Bakugan ever. He beats them both at the same time, and then battles Marucho, who has a Preyas that has not evolved, and an Elfin who has evolved, right? He takes the attribute energy from Elfin, because Elfin tries to sacrifice herself to protect Preyas, right? And then a Preyas that has not evolved proceeds to beat Max Spider and Subterra Trioid, which is also a powerhouse, at the same time. But Hydronoid can't do that. Like, yeah, I know Tripod Epsilon was there too, but like, hey, Preyas is clearly the focus of this battle. Like, he is the one pulling most of the work. It's so insane to me that they actually did this. That someone in the writer's room was like, yeah, and then Shadow Probe wins. And back to Chan again. Remember Face of Grief? I believe that was the ability. She has an ability card that lets her be immune to basically everything. Yeah, she used it and still lost to Naga, but I figured it was because Naga's G-Power, we can't see it, but we know it's 1,000 when it first comes out. Naga's G-Power would most likely still higher than Fortress, so even though he can't hurt him with abilities, his attack probably just connected because he is just stronger. My point being, for this specifically though, is she has an ability that lets him be immune to anything. And it's not the only ability like this in the series. We have the Farbros abilities, all very annoying, but they work like that they basically make them immune to so much, right? And she just doesn't use it. Chen is seriously only here to make Shadow look cooler and fight the other Fortress. And I know I keep saying this. I know I keep repeating myself, but she could have just done this if they needed to have this battle when he had to go get Marucho's attribute energy. Because I feel so bad if Chan Li is anyone's favorite character. Originally, I didn't like her at all till I started rewatching the series when I was getting ready to make this channel. And I realized, I even said in my video when I was doing 5 facts about her, that like, it's not really her fault because she just keeps going up against the most powerful characters in the series. She loses to Dan, who was evolving. Well, Drago was evolving. And then Drago actually evolved during their rematch. Then she loses to Masquerade, who was the #1 ranked player. He was the main villain of that arc at the time. And then she loses to Naga, the end game boss. She has the excuse that she's like just fighting really overpowered characters. And then you have Shadow Probe, who's probably the second weakest of the Vexos. They treat their female characters so poorly in New Vestroia. Like the returning girls, and I would even argue Mira and Mylene as well, but I have to reach a bit more to get people to understand that. But to wrap up this video, because I did somewhat do a script, I know I was going to go off script with a lot of my ranting, so I just left a bunch of loose ideas. But my point being is, like I said in the beginning, if you really look for it, there are probably battles on paper that are a lot worse. But because of the context that Alice had all of that build-up and development in the first season, when she comes back for her one battle, like the other girls, not only does she loses to one of the weakest members of the Vexos, and it's not just the fact that she lost, she had what was considered the big bad Bakugan for half that season, and this is their final showing ever as a duo. Like, Hydronoid shows up and ends up dying in Mactanium Surge with all the other Bakugan, but Alice doesn't come back after this. This is it for her. This is it for Chan as well, and it's so disappointing, because I remember the preview, I was so so excited. And I just wish that second round was the whole battle. It would have made, like, the 500 G power would still bother me, but I think it bothers me even more knowing that he lost. So with that, I think I'm done here. For those of you who saw my community now, I was going through some stuff in real life, and it made working on this video a lot more difficult than it really needed to be, to the point where I kind of wanted to just not upload it, but everyone seemed to be pretty understanding for the most part, as well as I did do a little vote to have everyone see what video they wanted. The next video is going to be a lot more positive. It's going to be a lore video with me trying to examine the Ultimate Warrior with the original Dragonoid and Darachnoid. So overall, it's going to be a lot more positive. I don't want to just do rant videos. I know my other two did fairly well, but I don't just want to talk about stuff that irritates me, because I don't want to be the guy who's just mad. Because personally, I don't think those type of videos are just that entertaining. Oh, if they're done all the time, you know what I mean? But tell me your guys' thoughts about this video, about this battle, in the comments below. If you guys like it and you just hate the ending, that is completely understandable. The ending just ruins the whole thing for me. And if you guys don't agree with my opinion on Shadow's skills as a battler, that is also understandable as well. Maybe one day I'll do a video ranking how I think all the battlers are placed. That's probably going to be a bit of a series for me, because I would probably do them by series. But without further ado, I'm Mike the Warrior. I'll catch you guys next time. Have a great day.